Have you ever heard of Bagel Brands? Bagel Brands is the company that owns Bruegger's Bagels, Noah's New York Bagels, Manhattan Bagels, and Einstein Bros Bagels. Apparently, there's one company that owns all of them, and they're called Bagel Brands, which I guess makes sense. The specific bagel brand that I want to talk about today is Bruegger's Bagels. Now, I made a video about some of the unionization efforts that are going on at one of the Bruegger's Bagels locations in Iowa City. Workers are going to be voting on July 9th about whether or not they're going to be unionized. And if they do vote yes, and they unionize, they're going to be with Bruegger's Workers United, which is it's an independent union. Starbucks Workers United is an example of an independent union. And the Starbucks comparison is interesting because a lot of the corporate response to the unionization efforts that are going on at Bruegger's is what we've seen the Starbucks Corporation respond to the unionization effort happening there. So a smoking gun that popped up for me when I was learning about this story is that when the workers announced that they were going to unionize, Bruegger's management shut down one of the two locations that was going to unionize right away. Like 2 days after the workers announced, hey, we're going to unionize, management just closed them down. And they say it's for maintenance. But it's one of those things where I think that they're just going to take their sweet time fixing whatever needs to be fixed and just kind of waiting for the organizing efforts to blow over. That's kind of the approach that management is taking. We've seen companies close down stores with burgeoning union activity before. This is straight out of the Starbucks playbook. Starbucks closed down over 20 stores when they thought these were going to be stores that might unionize. And this kind of surprises people. It took me a while to wrap my head around too. That feels like a disproportionate response, right? Like that's not a good business decision. How can they just close down a store or 20 stores? There must be something else going on. Let's play it out. Did Bruegger's really close down that Coralville store because of union busting? Wouldn't they be losing out on all of that revenue from the store being open? The workers are only asking for like a couple bucks an hour more. They're not asking for $1 million each. It's not that big of a deal. And the thing is, that's correct. It's not that big of a deal to just agree to a union and have the rights there. It shouldn't be so hard. But companies respond so disproportionately, like over the top, in response to any suggestion of unionized activity. It's about control more than it is the actual money. If this store in Iowa City were to unionize, it would be the first. And so I think that fact especially makes it so that, Bruegger's management is looking at this happen and they're thinking, we would do anything to make sure that the first domino doesn't fall. Union action, labor action is contagious. If one store unionizes, it occurs to other workers in the chain that, hey, we could unionize. And then, that fire spreads across the country, and then suddenly you've got a lot of unionized workers. And let me be clear, that's a good thing, but companies don't want that. And it's not about like the amount of money that it would really cost them. This is about control. Businesses want complete control over our lives and their workers' lives. They don't want any sort of check on their ability to control every aspect of your working conditions, what your schedule is like, how much you get paid. It's really dire, I think. And the freaking out that businesses do when the suggestion or the inkling of a union crops up is very darkly funny to me, I think. There's this whole elaborate system of union avoidance. Law firms get paid millions of dollars to come in and give strategies about how to prevent labor action from taking place in the store. One of the things that's going on in the Bruegger's in Iowa City that's going to vote is that they've got like a dedicated person there at all times to like just surveil workers. This is beyond just like a manager who's there in management capacity to make sure things are running smoothly. Their specific role is to just watch for conversations happening about unionization and shut it down as much as they can, except for taking workers into the manager's office and having like one-on-one conversations where they'll like drill anti-union propaganda into their heads. They'll like repeat talking points that I'm guessing come from Bruegger's corporate. A lot of times there's anti-union propaganda that companies put up. I remember when workers at Delta were working on their unionization effort, Delta would put up these posters. Union dues could go to buy an Xbox, things like that, like really patronizing things. I think it's a smart organizing move by the Bruegger's Workers United people to decide that their independent union won't collect dues from its members. And that's because traditionally, that's like the primary target for union busting propaganda to take aim at. They'll be like, the union is going to take all of your money, and it just goes to them. You know, it's they're taking something from you, and you don't get anything in return. And by just, heading that off at the pass, that takes a huge arrow out of their anti-union quiver, so to speak. Now, I'm a big believer in paying my union dues. I've happily paid my union dues as long as I've ever been in a union, because I know it's going to a bunch of things that benefit me and my coworkers and all of that. But I can see how this is an effective strategy for like a grassroots organization movement at like a food service place like Bruegger's. One of the things that Juniper, the organizer that I spoke to, shared with me was a flyer that was circulated at her store. This flyer is barely comprehensible. Before you vote, get union promises in writing. Get the facts, choose wisely. The union may make guarantees, promises, or implied promises. There are no guarantees in negotiations. The union can guarantee anything they want. It doesn't make it true. So the funniest thing about this flyer, besides just it being like pretty confusing, is that the point that it seems like they're trying to make is that the union can't guarantee anything. They still have to go through negotiations. And I'm thinking like, yeah, they're going to negotiate with you. You're just promising to be a massive asshole. They're basically saying, yeah, the union is going to try their hardest, but I'm not going to give you anything, right? Like, isn't that kind of how this feels? Sure, they want you to get paid more, but I'm evil and I'm never going to allow that. I've been struggling to figure out how to describe the rest of this flyer, and I've decided it's not particularly worth going into, at least, reading through it or anything. It's in the form of like a contract that a worker is supposed to look at and I guess think to themselves that the union can't actually provide any of these things, and so I shouldn't vote to unionize. And this is me being very charitable on how to understand this piece of paper. It's so poorly written that it makes me wonder where this comes from. If this is something that was written out by one of these union avoidance firms to disseminate in stores with union activity, then I gotta say, gang, we are not up against the best and brightest. But on the other hand, it's really funny to imagine that this was something that was written up by the general manager at one of these stores and handed out to the employees, and they're looking at it just like, what the hell are you talking about? Union busting happens. I think it's happening here. Workers are up against big, powerful companies that would rather go nuclear than give up even a tiny amount of control. But I think people are starting to recognize that more and more. And for the workers that are organizing campaigns like this, seeing what's happening is only helpful for their cause. So thanks for watching, and solidarity with the workers at Bruegger's who are voting this week to unionize.